pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Termination of a quorum.
Director Reynolds.
On here.
Director Luckman. President Johnson.
Here.
Director Unger. Director Unger. Director Hund. Mr. President, you have a quorum. All five are present.
Thank you, sir. Entertain a motion, excuse me, to approve the agenda.
I move the agenda.
Is there a second? All
I'll
those in
second it.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, public comment. Members of the public may address the board at this time with regard to matters within the board's jurisdiction that are not listed on the agenda. State law prohibits the board of directors from discussing or taking action on items not included on the agenda. Members of the public will have the opportunity for public comment on any item listed on the agenda when it is addressed on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Mr. Marquez.
Good evening, Board of Directors. Al Marquez, Joshua Basin, ratepayer from Sunfair Community. At the last meeting of March 20th, Director Reynolds requested information about the minutes from the previous meeting. And I noticed tonight I don't see those minutes in this packet. He asked the question why the minutes were not there, and the board, or the manager, secretary of the district said that there was other reasons. I didn't get exactly what the reason was, but they should have been in the agenda packet. And my comment has to do with transparency. And I've noticed in the last 18 years that I lived here in Joshua Tree, this board of directors and the previous board of directors has not been transparent with the other board members in this water district, and also in the ratepayers and owners, repeat, owners of this district. There are ratepayers. So it boggles my mind. Actually, I'm feeling a little nauseated. If you heard that word before by Mr. Comey about what's going on with this district. And the transparency is not there. They keep on talking about being transparent, and it's not transparent. They just tell the ratepayers what they think they should know instead of what they ought to know. So I support Mr. Reynolds about asking questions about minutes of previous meetings. It has to, whatever it might be, ad hoc committee or standing committee or whatever. And he asked that question, and other board members kind of shot him down on that. So I support Mr. Reynolds asking these questions, and he should get the respect from the other board members, just as the other board members are also asking respect from him. And it's also happened in the past with Mr. Wilson, and also another person, I won't say his name, but thank you for letting me make a comment. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments at this time? If not, I'll move on to approval for the consent calendar. The draft minutes from March 6th and the draft minutes from March 13th. Is there a motion to approve those?
On the subject of minutes, I'll make that motion.
All right.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved, so done. Number 7, updating the wastewater treatment strategy.
So, board members, this is a procedural correction from March 6th, when we discussed the wastewater treatment strategy with the recommendation that you approve the updated 2009 wastewater treatment strategy by the original author of the document, Dudek Engineering, at a cost not to exceed $44,000 with a 10% contingency. We actually all supported that, but the board packet agenda item was not properly worded for action, so it's now worded so that you can take action and approve the updated 2009 wastewater treatment strategy. So it's just making sure that everything is properly documented and transparent.
All right, is there any discussion amongst the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation.
Public comment?
Public comment, I'm sorry, thank you. Hearing no public comment on board.
I'll move that we approve the update to the 2009 wastewater treatment strategy by the original author of the document, Dudek Engineering, at a cost not to exceed $44,000 with a 10% contingency fee.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Do I
Aye.
need a roll call? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved, so done. Public hearing number 3. At this point, the board will conduct a public hearing to receive and discuss public input and comment regarding the potential transition from at-large election system to a district-based election system pursuant to Election Code Section 110, Item A1.
Good evening, Jennifer Farrell from Rattan and Tucker. Welcome to public hearing number 3. I'm going to be relatively brief tonight. You'll see that you have 3 draft maps in front of you that we've created based on the last 2 public hearings and the input we've received from both the board and the public. Tonight, just to be clear, you have a couple of options moving forward. If there's a consensus as to a particular map that the board and the public seems to like, then we can bring back a draft ordinance for the first reading for the adoption of that map at the next meeting, which is currently scheduled for April 10th. If there's some revisions that you would like to make, or even new maps that you'd like to create, we can go ahead and take care of that. If there are revisions or new maps created, just know that we need to post those on the board's website 7 days prior to the next public hearing, which is tonight. So it'll be a little bit of a scramble, but we have 2 gentlemen here, Jeff Tilton and Doug Johnson from NDC, who are here to walk us through the process, tell us a little bit about how the maps were created, and answer any questions you might have relating to the maps. And with that, I'll introduce Jeff.
And Jeff, let me interject for a minute. So that the public knows there's not just those 3 maps. If you can't read the maps in the PowerPoint, what's displayed up there, there are 3 rolls of maps. If you want to take one with you or you want to look at it now, it's available to the public. And with the posting requirements, we might want to consider moving the April 10th April 10th would be a special meeting, so we could move it to the 11th to give us a little bit more time to post if there are changes to the map. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Is there a trick to this? Probably the, always, there's a power button? Okay. All right, well, hello, everyone. Here we are, 3rd public hearing after the first 2 pre-draft map public hearings. In review, remember we talked about the things that we needed to accomplish in drafting maps for consideration. We needed to follow the federal laws, and in the districts divisions that we create must be equal population. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, that we must meet the Federal Voting Rights Act, and specifically not to dilute any voters, dilute any voting opportunities for folks. And then the other side of that is no racial gerrymandering. And then our goals, as the last couple of meetings, were to gather information from the community, from the Water District Basin community, from the board. What are the communities of interest? And we talked about that the maps should be compact and contiguous, and if there are natural boundaries that we should take under consideration and respect what the voters' choices are. And we gathered that the last couple of public hearing meetings, and we came up with, before we talked about that, we also had to look at the data that we have in the district, and that we see that Latinos are 16% of the total population. And in order to get a Latino legal division, it's possible with 21 to 23% of citizen voting adult population. So what we needed to do was get 5 districts, or 5 divisions rather, with each having a little over 1,900 residents. Excuse me. So we came up with 3. And map 101, and I'll expand these in a second, but in summary, map 101 was the vertical stripes idea that the board suggested. However, we can only get 4 divisions that were vertical, and we had to create 1 southwest division, again, based on population balance. Map 102, the one in the middle, is the neighborhood map suggestion that came up. I believe it was the second public hearing of combining particular neighborhoods. But there needed to be a significant revision to bring that population balance. And then map 103 is the one that National Demographics Corporation created. It's a compact map. It provides a mix of rural town, and has a town division. And it also avoids pairing 2 directors, and has a 21% Latino division that is nearly the max possible in this case. So going by each one, each map is that are on display here as well on the easels. Each map, it shows the various divisions, and it has the associated data to be connected to that particular draft. So 101 was that request for vertical stripes. And again, it's not possible to do that because the population balance it was not attainable. In addition, for map 101, 2 directors would have been in 1 division, and 3 directors would have been in a second division, and 3 divisions would have no directors, current directors. Okay? So that's 101. Map 102, the neighborhood idea, could not be accomplished as verbally requested, I believe after public hearing number 2, because it required extensive changes in the population balance. Downtown, the downtown neighborhood, you can see, actually moves south of 62. And this particular map uses Highway 62 as a boundary across the entire district. And there would have been 2 directors in Division 5. So that's map 102. Map 103 is compact and focused on unifying neighborhoods. Division 5 combines almost all of Monument Manor, Joshua Highlands, and southeast Friendly Hills to end up with a community-based 21% Latino citizen voter age population. Okay. Area 1 is all rural. Area 2 combines Copper Mountain Mesa and downtown. Area 3 has downtownish, relatively dense parts of Friendly Hills. Area 4 is rural except where it gets downtown population to reach the population balance. And there are no pairings in each division. So each current director is in each division. So those are the 3 maps that National Demographics Corporation has drafted for the board. We're blessed to have the president of the National Demographics Corporation, Doug Johnson, in the audience with me. And if there are any questions that the board would like us to entertain, we'd be happy to answer those.
Doug, do you have anything you'd like to add to this, just for our benefit?
No, Jeff covered it all.
Okay. Any public comment at this time? Yes, sir. Podium, please, Tom. Pardon?
Really?
I'm sorry,
Yes.
sir.
Really?
Thomas of Joshua Tree. Each of those maps reflect 2 of you in the same district. How would that work out if you accepted one of those? How would it work out as far as your representation? 2 of you are in each, at least one of the districts, and you accept it. How would that impact your board?
It looks like 103 is is spread out.
I think you got a red and a clear pin on that one.
I think think you got one in area 5 and one in area 4.
Okay, that didn't answer my question. Say you take this one over here or this one here. How would that impact the board?
How would it impact the board? One of us probably would not be eligible to run.
But presently?
Oh, presently, I don't think it's going to make any difference until 2020.
Okay.
I don't think it would affect eligibility to run, Tom. I think it's like, kind of right now, which we have at-large districts. And like, say, in the last election, last year, 5 people ran for 2 seats.
Okay.
And,
If one of the districts, nobody stood up and wanted to be a volunteer of America, would that district become at-large?
that's one of my concerns, and Doug, you might have an answer for that. I think you answer that at another like
Gotta
town
stand.
council or something.
I gotta be on the mic too. So no, it would not become at large. It would be like any vacancy, so the board could choose to appoint if you wanted to appoint, and if you didn't appoint in whatever the time limit is, then a special election would be called. And theoretically, you could end up in this cycle of, if no one ever stepped up, you just have appointment, cancel special election appointment, but eventually someone would hopefully step up.
If you were going to appoint someone, do they have to be appointed from the district that's vacant?
Yes. If you're a registered voter in that district.
Tom, anything more?
Anything else you want to say?
Are you the leader of the pack?
No.
I'm just asking you a question. Elmerick is Sunfair Community.
Yes, sir.
I support map number 103, other than the other two. The conflict that I have is that the board of directors and whoever else supported a north and south division of the district. I support east and west division of the district. Like Copper Mountain Mesa does not go down to the highway. Well, basically what I like to say is that Copper Mountain Mesa, basically it goes from, I wrote it down here, from Border Avenue, which goes north and south, and east to the Copper Mountain itself, just before it goes into 29 Palms. The Sunflower community is basically from Rice Road over to the Copper Mountains, and that includes the Dry Lake area. Panoramic Heights is basically the borders there is a national park down to Highway 62 where Copper Mountain College is, and the eastern portion of it is Lee Avenue, which is a border of Joshua Tree and 29 Palms, west to, I would imagine, someplace in, before Center Avenue. So in no respect, I would think that we have a site number 2, which hasn't really been defined correctly, and I support, other than 5 members of the board, like the board of directors thinks it should have. I think that we should have 7 districts instead of just 5 districts. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Please state your name and residence again for the record, please.
Thomas Falls, Joshua Tree, 45 years. I would support that if you didn't get a volunteer to run, that you would allow at-large rather than throwing back on you and you making a selection. It's kind of taking the democratic process and throwing it in the toilet. And I think that like, Mike, how many votes did you get this last time?
200 and some odd.
Apathy reigns. Is there really 9,000 people in Joshua Tree? That's extraordinary. We can go for cityhood. We're close to it. Yeah, what we've lost in Joshua Tree really is our sense of community. And 4 years ago, we were kind of a humbug, and 4 years later, we have 1,200 B&Bs. Our public forum disappeared, the Joshua Tree Municipal Advisory Country. I'm losing my words here. Our Chamber of Commerce has disappeared. Joshua Tree Association has disappeared. The pool is buried, and I feel, I'm going off board here, but I feel that we've lost our sense of community. You guys are a representative of the community. That's why I came down. You know, Joshua Tree Village is part of our community. But if any of you are interested in reestablishing the community, call me. It's my new mantra. I feel that you, at the that large, should get a volunteer and should be voted on by the people.
You understand, this wasn't our choice.
Oh, no, this is only suggestions.
Right. And that's why I asked Doug, because are we, how bounded are we in case no one runs in a district? And then we can, you said either have a special election or we can appoint. How, and it would have to be appointing a person from that district. We couldn't appoint an at-large.
State law.
Yeah.
Doug, can we, Doug, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, can we get you up to the podium and get that on record, please?
Yeah, unfortunately, the rules on what happens if no one runs and vacancy special election is all set in state law. So there's no options for the board to decide among.
Before you go, I have a question just for clarification. If nobody runs in a district, do we have a choice of appointing or calling a special election, or is it first, you know, what are our options and who makes that decision?
Under state law, you have a certain number of days to
You
do
have
an
60
appointment.
days, Gary, to make an appointment or call for election. You have exclusive authority within that time frame.
Okay.
If you don't exercise that time, within that time frame, the Board of Supervisors could make an appointment or call for a special election. That's
Thank you
generally
both.
speaking. That's just from memory, I'm remembering.
Director Reynolds, just a second.
Thank you. Moving the subject back to the maps, on Division 3, you had mentioned that it had the better division of the different races. Now, how was that determined? Because I'm looking at all of this, and it's, you know, it's total population versus voting versus registration to vote, voter turnout. Now, how was that determined?
So the Federal Voting Rights Act, which is what we look at for kind of do districts comply with empowering Latinos or whatever protected class, it actually looks at can we take the protected class and put them together in a seat where they have the best chance to win. And you don't have a large pocket here. We do a lot of work in the Central Valley where it literally is the railroad track, all Latino on one side and all white on the other. You don't have that here. But looking at the citizen voting age numbers, which are what the courts focus on, because that's your eligible voters, they're citizens and they're 18 and older, that's where we get a slightly more concentrated, we get 21% in map 103 in Division 5 versus...
The writing is so small, I have to listen because I can't even make out what this says.
Yeah, and
guys.
it's not a big difference. It's not a driving factor. Because like in map 101, we actually get a 22% Latino seat. It's 2, so it's the blue one is 22. And in a small jurisdiction like this, these numbers are going to be plus or minus at least 3, probably closer to 5. So 21, 22, they're the same number, essentially. But that's what they're looking for, is not an equal percentage in each division. The law is looking for, can you concentrate the protected class in an effort to give them a good chance of electing to that seat. Here, 21, 22 is as concentrated as you can get.
Okay, yeah, 22%. If we're 10,000, that's 220.
It's even less because it's 22% of the citizens of voting age. So you're down about 6,700. The total citizens of voting age, and about 20% of that is about 1,200. So Yeah, so it's an even smaller number. It is a little bit, you're in that ballpark in all these maps. It's not going to make a big difference on that perspective. This is just California taking a federal law that works pretty well and is pretty clear and messing it up, like California likes to do.
This small of a community, I don't see how this is going to work. We have no choice, but it's just silly.
Any other questions for Doug? If not, then I'll continue on with public comment.
Good evening, Gail Austin, Joshua Tree resident, and I just want to say that I really like map 103. At first, when we talked about it, I thought that I would like it where it was split up like map 101, but after looking at the numbers on 103, I like the percentages as far as ethnicity, income, everything. It's very, very balanced, and I like balance. And I also like the fact that even though these things are named as these areas, that it's not, that we're combining. I'm in I live in Panorama Heights, and I'm going to be combined with Copper Mountain Mesa and Sun Fair. And my business is downtown, and that's with in 103, that's pretty much by itself because that's a real heavy concentration. I do like the fact that this works not only for all of the balance, but also that all of the directors are in different districts. I know that was a tough choice because if you guys say you want it, you look selfish. And if you say you don't want it, then we're left with nobody to be our directors because nobody wants to run. And so I'm extremely pleased that they came up with a map that meets all of this criteria, and it works with the directors now. And then I think in the future, we just have to work on getting the word out that this is going to be by district, and that we have to just make sure that qualified people are running for each district, and we do have the time between now and 2020 and 2022 to accomplish that. So I just want to say I'm definitely in favor of map 103 with no changes. Thank you.
Good evening, Tom Flaw, Joshua Tree North. I do orbit the farmers market regularly on Saturday mornings, and there's an opportunity there to corral or buttonhole people and talk to them about some of this stuff. I regarded it as somewhat dangerous because I'm raising the issue of race with protected class people that I spoke with, which was probably about 5 sets of people, anywhere from 1 or 2 or 3 people in a group. What I found out was that none of them knew anything about this and what we were doing, which was good because it gave me a chance to ramp up and explain to them why I'm talking racial stuff with protected class people. But the only clear thing, I got 2 clear things. One of them was that with a Hispanic couple, the lady said, the wife, she said that my fundamental question was, which I wanted it to be neutral, kind of, was would you be bothered if your community was all in one district, or would you want it in 2 districts, split, so that there's influence in both 2 districts instead of just one? And 3 people of the folks that I talked to said that they preferred that it be split, which surprised me. And apparently, for what we've just talked about 2 minutes ago, was that by law we can't do that. We can't. We're trying to make a community of people that can have influence in one district, and therefore more likely elect somebody that represents them more completely, or however you might want to say it. One person, Johnny, who was waiting for his laundry, the farmer's market booth is adjacent to the laundromat there, so you can catch people that have time on their hands. Johnny says, we're past all this. As far as he was concerned, he was an African-American man, and he thinks this stuff is irrelevant. He was raised a large part of his life in Alabama before he came out this way, and he thought this was all kind of irrelevant. But in other words, I'm saying I'm not sensing a whole bunch of community heat over this issue here, and I think we should simply apply whatever the law is here in full speed ahead on that. I had a thought earlier, I believe I stated rather adamantly up here, that the who's who as far as directors goes in regions was a complication that we would best do without. However, on second thought, I'm kind of considering that if we lost a group of directors in an election because of this, it would be somewhat destabilizing to the operation of this district if we clustered a group of newbies up here that probably have not gone to any of the meetings, because we get very few people from the public here generally. So in other words, I didn't like the idea of having any whiff of gerrymandering in this thing to keep people in power, kind of a thing. But I've moved back a little bit to where we need to keep some experienced 18 people up here to keep an eye on management during this tremendous growth period that we're going to be going through.
Are there any other public comments? If not, I'll ask the board if they have anything they'd like to add, starting with Director Reynolds.
Thank you. Gil?
Yes, sir.
I have a question, a question to interpret this letter on a certain paragraph. Would it be appropriate if I asked you that?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll probably have to depend on Jennifer, but let's hear
Okay,
it.
on page 18 of 42.
Of today's agenda package?
On the agenda, yes.
I'm there, Michael.
I'm just having trouble understanding this. There's paragraph 1, 2, and paragraph 3. It says the California legislature dispensed with the requirement in jingles that a minority group demonstrate that it is sufficiently large and geographically compact to constitute a majority-minority district. I'm leading back to the word jingles. And how does that apply? I looked it up in the dictionary, and I got a different answer to what that word meant, and so now I'm concerned.
The word jingles is reference to a case that was litigated.
Okay.
And Jennifer probably is familiar with it. If she
Okay.
wants to comment, she may.
Well, that makes sense why it didn't make sense to when I looked it up in the dictionary.
Yeah, it wouldn't be in the dictionary.
Oh, it's in the dictionary.
Oh, well,
Is it really?
probably not the right reference then.
Yeah, it's, look it up and you'll be amused. Okay,
Curious
thank
now.
you. That answered that question pretty easily.
That's the way lawyers talk. We just use the surname as a reference to a premise of law.
Director Loveland?
No comment?
Let me go down the other end, Director Hunt.
I generally agree with Gail's comment regarding the maps. I like map 103 the best because it, there are other neighborhoods there, and there are combined neighborhoods, and it would have been wonderful if we could have drawn a line around each distinct neighborhood, and it worked out perfectly, but there's no way to accomplish that. So, but what I do like, and I think Gail touched on it, is there's a good distribution of ethnicities and income, and I like the fact that the goodly portion of the downtown area is captured, because I think that does have an identity, and then the rest of the areas are rural neighborhoods that are collected together. And it also, as we saw at our last meeting, looking at the census blocks, it was a logical way to break up Joshua Tree by population. So all things considered, it looks like a great map to me. Tom Flone's comment about gerrymandering, I do agree with that in terms of, I don't believe in going to great lengths to preserve a director's seat or two directors, keep two directors from running against each other. I think that the most important thing is to come up with a map that balances all those other factors: population, ethnicity, income, the like neighborhoods. I know, Panorama Heights has its own identity, and for folks that live there, they probably wish that they could have retained that, but they just don't simply have sufficient population, nor does Monument Manor where I live, or Joshua Tree Highlands, so we had to combine with other neighborhoods in order to make a map. That's all I have, thank you.
Director Unger?
And I kind of thought like Al did too about like the east to west. So I'm looking like the Sunfair Copper Mountain Mesa on map 103. Copper Mountain Mesa is larger on 102, but goes down a lot farther. And there is an east-west kind of a drawing there. What I would see on 103 is, I don't know, I guess I keep looking at Panorama Heights too, like to be a district. And following the west boundary of number 3, and then going down into Monument Manor. I don't know, I'm not good at this, Gary, you're the map maker. But I just really want to make sure that sort of like-minded communities are represented. And so when people run from those areas, that they feel that they're getting the person that, or at least the candidates, hopefully, that best represent them. Like I've said before, philosophically, I support by-district elections. It gives people who might not run for office in a large district a chance to run in a small district, and with more direct representation for that district. They're you would think maybe more well-known in their district. They know the issues of that district more. It's less expensive to run in a smaller area than a whole big at-large district. And I mean, I philosophically support that. And hopefully, doing this, people will run. And I don't know, I guess whichever the map everyone else likes, I guess I'd go with it. But once again, my hackles just raise at the thought that we have purposely been prejudiced against protected classes and keeping them from being elected to the board. And I mean, this is a public document. Al, have you seen this? They use you as an example in here.
No comment.
And no comment. I'm done.
All right, I've looked at these, and I want to thank everybody that's been involved. I think you've captured a lot of what we're up against here. I kind of concur with Director Hunt. I think 103 is pretty much representative of a lot of the statistical stuff that we're looking at, numbers and composition, and I don't think there's any easy way around this, but I would like to say that I've appreciated the public comment most of all, and I think one of the things of being a longtime resident of Joshua Tree, I concur. I think a lot of this is feeding into the fact that we're losing a grand portion of what Joshua Tree used to be. So with that being said, we are going to be compliant, and we will do the right thing. I've always looked at Joshua's Tree as being pretty eclectic, and I think I read some comments from one of the meeting notes that, our differences sort of bring us together, and that appreciation, young and old alike, we all have some commonalities here because we are here. And trying to maintain that flavor for Joshua Tree is going to be one of the things that we're going to be tasked with. So with that being said, I would like to entertain a motion that, is that correct?
Yep.
That we do our best here to at least move forward and make some selection on a map. Is that what I need to do, Gil?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll open it up to the board here, or before I do that, is there any other public comment? Hearing none, seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion to,
So is the public testimony closed then?
yeah, I assume.
I had one, just wanted to bring, on our, the tentative timeline schedule for tonight's meeting, it says public hearing 3, first of 2 public hearings after maps are drawn. And then on the side notes, it says public hearing 3 tonight, and public hearing 4 must occur within 45 days of each other, not within 10 days. It says notice for all public hearings must be published and posted 10 days prior to the hearing.
7 days.
Well, that was back here.
So there's a bunch of different dates in there. Public hearing under the CVRA, the third public hearing and the fourth public hearing do have to be held within 45 days of each other on the tentative timeline. We're in compliance with that. And then I think you're referring to a 10-day timeline to publish notice of the public hearing in the
Yes, notice for all
newspaper.
public hearings must be published and posted 10 days prior to the meeting date.
And that's already been taken care of as well when it comes to tonight's meeting and public hearing number 4.
So we would actually have 45 days between tonight's public hearing 3 and public hearing 4?
Potentially. There's a lot of other dates that factor into that timeline, and there's 5 total hearings that have to be held within 90 days. So if somehow you could come up with a permutation where you hold your first 2 public hearings close together, then potentially you could have 45 days between number 3 and number 4 and still get in a 5th one. That's not the way the calendar really worked out for us, but potentially, yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, you are down to number G in the agenda, board action. I think you read it, you've divided a motion
Yes, sir.
to choose a map of preference.
All right, so do I, at this point, have any comments from the staff, or is that not appropriate at this time? Appropriate? Inappropriate?
It's totally appropriate if they wish to comment.
I see
I
nobody
see a bunch
jumping
of
up and
zippers
down.
closed.
Yes or no?
My mother taught me, if you can't say anything good, don't say anything at all. My father reinforced it.
That is so sound.
Thank you.
Enough said.
All right. With that being said, I'll entertain a motion from the board to look at these maps and let's have some discussion or vote on one.
Well, I'd like to discuss the map a little bit more. I
Yes,
made a
sir.
comment on one thing, but I did not get to the discussion of the map. I also like 103 for this main reason, just like what you said, Gail. It's a good division. The other 2 maps were divided into a neighborhood or just a vertical lines. And so just the theory of dividing it up just to make lines didn't turn me on. The neighborhoods, I kind of like the idea of neighborhoods, but the whole reason we are doing this is to get the opportunity, and this is why I asked the question about percentages and where do the numbers come from, is to get the opportunity of euthicities to get out there and vote. And this way, Joshua Tree can be represented as best as possible. And so with that in mind, 103 is the one that works for me. It's a large, I get Division 4 is huge. Going door to door to visit people is going to be a challenge, but how it's divided up, I'm all for it, so. I would be on board to make a vote on a map tonight as well.
All right. Director Luckman's giving me the, I want the gavel.
We got a pen?
No, I don't.
She may bring her own next time.
Yeah, she might, too, a glass gavel.
We gave her one. She hasn't broken it yet. Okay, no comment?
I'm glad we bolted it down to that plaque.
Director Hunt.
No, I have no comments. I'm ready to proceed.
All right, Director Unger.
I guess at this time we would,
We're down to G.
under G,
Board
board
action.
action would be to recommend, I guess, that the board adopt map number 103. Is that
Is
what
that a
I'm
motion?
hearing?
Is that a motion?
Is that,
Sounds like one.
I guess I'm trying to
Yes.
put it as one.
yes.
That's it.
So, okay, so the motion would be then that the board adopt map 103,
Can I edit your motion a little bit?
pardon me?
Can I just edit your motion slightly?
yeah.
Just, so in order to actually adopt the map, we have to have a first and second reading of an ordinance. So I think maybe an appropriate motion would be to move forward with the adoption of map 103. And then if that motion passes, then at our next meeting, I can bring back a draft ordinance for a first reading, and then we can do a second reading.
So the correct way to word that is I move that we move forward with adopting map 103,
That works?
and then that goes out then for, that's all I have to say?
That's all you have to say.
Okay. All right.
We can put more words in there if you want.
I can say even less by I second that.
All right. Any further discussion from the public? Then I will entertain a motion to approve our motion.
What was it, Bob?
Help me again.
Move forward with adopting map 103.
Approve 103.
All those in favor?
I have a second on that. All the board, do I need a roll call?
All in favor?
All
Aye.
in favor?
Aye.
So moved, so carried.
Is that unanimous, Michael?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Got it.
All right, item number 9, I'm sorry. Thank you, everybody.
And we're going to let
Yes,
Doug
sir.
and Jeff and Jennifer take off.
Anticipated?
And this is the most public we've had here since we've been home.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Is that the end? Just
Yeah.
adjourn it, so that's the regular adjournment meeting. Isn't that what you do?
Item number 9, general counsel report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, not much. I've been looking at the legislation that's been up for adoption, but there's an interesting one that's one by authored by Holden, and it's tax relief for people that receive rebate vouchers for conservation things. And it's a bill that'll make that tax exempt. I just thought that was interesting myself. And so I looked at it a little closer, and it's being opposed by a California tax advocate group because the largest beneficiaries of making rebates, vouchers, non-taxable are large corporations. So I understand now why a tax group, a reform group would be opposed. I thought that was interesting. I just wanted to share that with you. And there's another bill that's even more interesting that I think I'm sure you're aware of it. That's the Bianca bill on, it says that, I'm getting back to like chromium-6 issues, whenever the State Water Resources Control Board adopts a measure that enforces a compliance with safe drinking water standards, no longer rushing to judgment, they're going to have a pro forma waiting period. 3 years is being suggested. I don't know how the bill will settle out eventually, but to give the experts, the water districts, the purveyors of water, the providers of time to address that issue in a more economical and scientific fashion. Good bill. And this would prohibit what happened out at Coachella Valley Water District, where they were all poised to spend $250 million on a chromium-6 cleansing process. They came up with a whole different scientific approach that saved a lot of money. And that's what this bill is aimed to correct. That's Bianca out of, where's she from? I don't remember where she's from. It's Bianca. It doesn't make any difference. It's a bill that she's tendered for adoption. Thought you should know about it. Probably already knew about it, but I'd remind you anyway. That's a good bill. And if you're called to support it, I urge you to do so.
So I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Gail. Have they considered in that first bill maybe making a cap on tax exemption, so someone like me that replaces a toilet and gets a $100
I'm sure that'll be
rebate
brought up. And who's going to bring that up is the tax advocate group.
versus a major corporation or...
These,
or-
both of the bills I commented on briefly, they're in the infant stages right now. There'll be a lot of changes both ways.
Yeah, I just think of that your average consumer, when they get a break on an energy-efficient hot water heater or new doors or...
It'd be awful to tax them on that. You know,
Yeah.
it's contrary to the whole reason for conservation measures.
Right.
But on large corporate type of entities, it makes more sense. My way of thinking, and probably yours too.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, agenda item number 10, General Manager's Report.
Just some general things. Sarah and other staff members are in the process of hiring 3 positions: the lead equipment operator, the part-time office employee, office technician, office assistant, and the contracting procurement specialist. Sarah and Mark and Ann and Autumn have been busy with interviews, and we hope to be bringing you some new employees in the near future. We've been working on the strategic plan draft. You'll remember the strategic plan from several months ago. We have the spreadsheet that staff is comfortable with and I'm comfortable with, and it will be forwarded to Mary Orton next week. That will be combined with the narrative and the pretty pictures into a draft, which we'll then bring to the board, and there'll be a board workshop on the strategic plan. And the public is invited. Tom? Public is invited. We're working on the budget for 2019 and 20. And Mark, you want to say something about the equipment received?
Sure, we got our water truck and our dump truck in, so the last piece of equipment that we're waiting for, actually 2 more pieces, our 20-foot dump bed and then also our paver, which we're still in the hunt of finding a good used deal on one of those, so.
It's in the process. At the last board meeting, I think it was the last one, maybe the one before that, we had brought a recommendation to the board that we take the recharge money for 2019-20 and move it forward so that we could help Mojave Water Agency facilitate finishing delivery of water so that they could work on on infrastructure, mainline and reservoirs. And they wanted us to be done by September. So we received a proposal today from them that our flow would not be 1,800 gallons per minute, but rather 1,300 gallons per minute, and then dropping down to 1,100 gallons per minute. And instead of recharging in 3.5 months, recharge in 7 months, which means that Mark's crew would be busy with recharge, checking the pressure reduction valve stations, checking the ponds, et cetera, over a 7-month period. So with all we have going on, Mark is going to meet with phone conference with Randy Little and Mark are going to be talking to Mojave Water Agency folks and see if we can't change that schedule, and or we may be coming back to the board with a recommendation that we just wait until the spring, because having 1 or 2 people over a 7-month period of time, especially all the way through the summer, just doesn't work well. And I also mentioned a couple board meetings ago that there was a new law. Congress passed a bill that became effective in October of 2018 regarding risk and resilience and emergency response planning. And I mentioned to y'all that we had recently completed our vulnerability assessment, updated it, and we have completed the emergency response plan. Well, it's not quite complete, but Gary Sturdivant is rounding out the edges. So there's now been additional guidance from the American Water Works DC office, and Gary wrote us today and informed us that if his company had written the emergency response plan within the last 2 years that we will be in compliance with the new law as far as the emergency response plan goes. But the vulnerability assessment has a new twist in it. Now, not only does the vulnerability assessment need to cover our risk, but how resilient our agency is in the event that some of those risks occur. So, we're not quite done with the vulnerability assessment. And then lastly, I just want to inform the board that we're getting ready to spend $6,800 on replacing control valves in the garden, in the demonstration garden. It's not a regular maintenance item. It's necessary to get the system back to the original plans and specs. It's been, over the years, severely impacted by the floodwaters that come through every time it threatens to rain and does rain and pushes a lot of dirt into the area, and it's covered a lot of the emitters, and it's 8 to 9 years old. So in order to keep the demonstration garden going on an ongoing basis, this is a $6,800 bill to make sure that the irrigation system works. That will be on top of the roughly $7,000 it takes to maintain that garden and replace plants and keep it spruced up annually. So I just wanted to mention that to the board, either fix it or have a terrible looking demonstration garden. And that's the end of my report, unless you have anything you want to throw in. Anything else?
Good.
We're good.
Directors have any comments? No? All right, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 11, directors' comments, reports on meetings attended, public outreach. Ms. Radnich.
I want to begin by thanking, and I'm just going to start around the room, Sarah, kind of Kurt, Mark, Mickey, Rebecca, Beverly, Tom, everyone who has either behind the scenes or during the onslaught of community public helped make our 6th annual Water Education Day huge success. I can validate that with numbers because we doubled the foot traffic this year. And we went from, I'm not going to read the whole report, I'm just going to let you know, we started off in 2014 with a whopping 1 plant variety. We are up to, in 2019, our 6th annual, we offer 22 plant varieties. These are collected seeds by volunteers, okay? And then in 2014, we brought in $1,000 in plant sales, and now we've brought in 2,462. So, and then I'll just add, in 2014, we estimate 200 people foot traffic initially, and we're now up to 665. So what I'm seeing over a 6-year period of building this community educational event is that it's growing. And that's a feather in everyone's cap that participates, all the organizations, the agencies that help support it. Some who aren't there exhibiting have sent supplies to help support it. So I want to say thank you on behalf of the community, to the community, from all of us, that this event is still strong and it's growing. The next Water Education Day for 2020, everyone mark your calendar so that it's not a surprise and you plan a special vacation that weekend, will be March 29th. The event allowed for some very healthy sign-ups for our summarizing seminar that's coming up the end of this month on Tuesday, April 30th at 6:30 p.m. here in the boardroom, and that is how to do it yourself, expand your own watering system and repair it and get it all top-notch and ready so there's no leaks for summer.
And then it also allowed for great signups for our May 4-part course of wildcrafting, which has expanded, and the national park is far more involved with the training in it this time around. Obviously, spring is huge in blooms, and we're pretty excited that this may be the year we really get a lot more varieties, what have you, but it is, I think everyone, the public, they're just loving our desert, and they want to somehow learn how to perpetuate it. So this class is, like I said, growing in popularity. I will be forwarding my report to the board with the after-event recap of the surveys, so you can see those. I know you always like to have those. And also, we're in a new month, so April is the state's Earthquake Preparedness Month. Twice a year, we promote education on disaster preparedness, specifically earthquake. Plan for an earthquake, you're pretty darn prepared. So at our booth at the Farmers Market will be wonderful ideas on how to supply your emergency water. If you at home have not done it yet, come see us and we will show you how easy it is. And lastly, there has been going around to many of the organizations and agencies a nasty little virus in our computers. And we got hit, other agencies got hit, and it's annoying, and we're all having to deal with it, but it comes in the form of an email saying, oh, here's the files you wanted from us. And unfortunately,
It'll say your first name and last name shared.
okay, it says your first name, last name shared. I'm just saying, I'm getting calls from everywhere saying, you need to know that we're getting a virus. And I said, I got it too. I know, we all got it. I don't know how. It's just people stay awake at night trying to dream up new ones. So be forewarned, be prepared, and be cautious. I just want to let you know, because it's not just our organization. Many of the organizations are claiming they're getting hit with it up here. So, thank you.
All right, Mojave Water Agency, March 28th, Vice President Unger.
Was me, and Kurt, Mojave's allocated $50,000 for their demo garden. So, yeah, those things, there's a little upkeep involved. Yeah. They did 3 really interesting workshops, and one of them was on their strategic plan update. And their general manager, he noted, he said Kirby Brill initiated that plan in 2002, and the last update was 2006. So he was clearing off all kinds of stuff that had already been done, and, you know, so they're starting to work on theirs. And he said he hopes he could review the plan annually. It's pretty ambitious. But they're also looking at personnel succession planning, which is a big deal for them as well as for us, including mid-level training for management succession, bringing in an expert for asset management, and creating a state water project dedicated staff with the new hire of a senior engineer. And also rates, fees, revenue evaluations are going on. And he said he struggled with this year's budget and the high costs that are coming. And they did talk about the budget. All of us who go to these meetings, I think we all hear the directors and the staff talking about, you know, budget challenges coming up for Mojave. And a lot of it has to do with the Department of Water Resources, the water fix, where they're gonna be with that. And their CFO, Kathy Kortner, and their senior accountant, Gary Bird, they presented this overview. And they're projecting that pumping demands are going to be down 6,000 acre feet in the 1920 year from this year. They said even though their population in the service areas has increased, they're looking to sell 1,000 acre feet to the Central Coast Water Authority in some kind of water transfer deal. But then they noted that the DWR nixed a 2,000 acre foot deal with the Irvine Ranch, so they weren't very happy about that. And their accountant, Gary Bird, he noted that these DWR costs are like 1/2 of the budget expenditures. Good news, though, there is going to be some grants coming in with $32,000 in the AWAC budget. So we get stuff out of the AWAC budget. And, but they're also looking at a $400,000 USGS Basin Management Strategy Plan, looking for some grant funding for that, and a $700,000 SCADA upgrade. So that was originally supposed to be in the 18-19 budget, but it'll be in the 19-20 budget. And then Lance Eckhart, he's their basin management and planning guy, and Tony Winkle, senior hydrologist, they did a really interesting study on water banking. They began the study last year to look at overdraft in that Baja subbasin, and they came up with, Lance said, we're very different from areas that get lots of rain and snow but don't have underground storage ability. He says, we have a pristine desert aquifer because we don't have all like the dairy farms and other ag and industrial use. He said, we're able to import water and move it around. And he said, even the ground under the California aqueduct, he said, is dry ground for banking. You know, and he said, well, you know, then where are we going to store, you know, the 70% allocation for this year? And he says, are the wheels fully off that water fix? And he said, this water banking is like saving for a not rainy day by bringing other people's money and water into our area. I would like to, when things really quiet down for us, get Lance and Tony come out here and give us that presentation. It was really interesting. And they're really excited about it. And at the next Mojave Water meeting, maybe the next one, CFO Kathy Kortner is going to do the financial kind of breakdown of how it will benefit Mojave and other people involved and what the opportunities are. So it's an interesting study. So who knows, maybe July, August, when it gets boring around here.
I was just really curious to know when it is that things are going to quiet down for us.
We always say
September.
that. We always say that. It gets dull in the summer. No, it doesn't.
Never.
So at some point, well, I'd like to have them come out. In a couple months, we get some other stuff done. Thank you. That's my report.
Okay, future director meetings and training opportunities. April 4th, we have the TAC. That's with Director Luckman. It's at Mojave Water Agency. Finance Committee on April 10th, which is always the most exciting and the most riveting meeting.
All right, Bob's back.
We look forward to seeing you all here at 9 o'clock in the morning. Water Resources and Operations, the 10th also with Director Hunt and Director Reynolds. And we have a ASBS BCD
Special districts.
dinner, and Director Reynolds will be going to that on April 15th. At this time, director's comments or closing words of wisdom?
Well, at first, when we were pushed into going from at-large to district elections, I felt that it was, you know, an unnecessary cost and burden to the district, and it's still unfortunate that we have to pay an attorney that sent us a form letter, some $30,000 in expenses, which I personally doubt they incurred. But in the end here, in the main, I like this. I really like it because I think that it will encourage people that really understand their neighborhood and their area to run for office and represent the areas that they're familiar with. So I hope as time goes by, we see that and we get, you know, representation from folks that really understand the water issues in their particular area and neighborhoods. And I know there was some concern about, you know, maintaining our sense of continuity as a community, so I'm suggesting that we form district softball teams. So,
There you go.
anyway, but seriously, that could be fun. So you know, it's interesting that Director Luckman was mentioning the water challenges that the Mojave Water Agency is facing, and I've heard that over several meetings now. And I think some of that is ultimately going to translate to cost to this district. And I know it was very painful, I think, for all of us to raise rates. And nobody likes to pay more for their water, or really, I think it's more, you know, have their monthly budget comprised of more bills and less discretionary income. But what I will say, I really do think it was a wise move, because I think that we're now poised to be able to do the infrastructure replacement that we need to do in this district, and move forward with pipeline replacement and replacement of other infrastructure. And we won't see ourselves in a situation in 2 or 3 years where we're unable to do any of that, and we're getting further and further behind the curve. So lastly, I wanted to say that I was not one of the directors that was working at Water Education Days, but I saw plenty of our directors and former directors and staff out there participating, and Kathleen, I think you all did a wonderful job.
Yes, we all did.
Yeah, I walked the entire area and visited every booth, and I was really impressed with the booths and with the turnout, and just what a great thing that is for our community. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll say to Kathleen, thank you so much. That Water Education Day is really cool. I really like it, and you do a lot of work for that. I mean, it's a lot, just getting the people to come, the vendors, everything, the demonstrations. It's really great. And the park had, Daryl Shade had gone out that morning and collected, I don't know, he must have had 30 vials of just plants, wildflowers he had collected on Utah Trail going up to the park in 29 Palms. And beautiful, just beautiful little flowers and stuff. And then right there on our island there where the trees are, we looked at what was in that island, and he said, oh my gosh, he said, that doesn't grow on here. He said, all the rains must have washed the seeds over here. So we got a pretty little demonstration garden over there, just everything. But thank you, our Water Education Day is cool, and I really enjoy it. And I want to thank people for, paying attention to these maps. In 2020, Division 3, 4, and 5 will be up. So people, sharpen your canvassing skills. It's an election coming up. And I just wondered, Kurt, could we get Chad Mays to come out here and talk to us about what's going on in Sacramento with this stuff? Other people must be complaining.
I'll contact his office and ask.
Director Reynolds.
Well, we're in the middle of this excitement for the district voting. I've said how I feel about it, and it's a crying shame. But we have to move forward, we have to comply, and that's the law. So let's move forward and get that done. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. It's very important to hear what you have to say. It really does influence me in my decision process as well. Prior to the meeting, we read the agenda, we read the notes, we have a good idea what we're going to think and how we're going to move forward on any particular agenda item. But then when you come and you have a whole different thought to say, I just want you to know it's appreciated and heard, and it could be easily something that would sway a decision. So thank you for coming.
I just want to say that we just don't give Kathleen enough credit for all of the stuff she does. Water Education Day was awesome. It really was exhausting, absolutely exhausting, but it was awesome. And the farmer's market, I don't think people realize that you are like the Energizer Bunny. You go everywhere and you do everything, and we really, really appreciate it. Thanks, Kathleen, and thank you, everybody else, for being here
I
tonight.
put it on my calendar for next year already.
Can I add one comment about Kathleen? Sure. I also want to say that Kathleen, when you're there, when I'm there as a director in our booth at the farmers market, Kathleen is so attentive to anybody that comes along and really spends a lot of time with each one of them, explaining our native plants, our exhibit. Say it's preparing for winter and winter freeze, whatever it is. I think that's a particular talent that people have, or maybe it's empathy or whatever it is, but she doesn't take people for granted. She always gives very generously of her time, and I really appreciate it.
Well, and one more thing, so glad to have you back.
I'd just like to say thanks to the board, thanks to the staff for covering for me. I'd also like to give a shout out to Z107. Mike, thank you for being here and doing everything that you do, and our first responders, for those men and women that are out there 24/7, and our staff that's on call. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, wait, I have to interrupt you, Mr. Chairman. Special Election Counsel, before she left tonight, asked me to request that the board entertain a motion or order to adjourn tonight's meeting as a regular meeting to April 10th at 6:30 PM. She needs this adjourned to a regular meeting specifically to stay on task with what she's been commissioned to do, proceed with preparation of an ordinance for adoption. So what I'm suggesting to you now, instead of your typical boilerplate adjournment, I would suggest that you ask for a motion to adjourn tonight's regular board meeting to April 10th, 2019 at 6:30 PM, and authorize staff to post such notice in the door of this building.
And Rebecca Unger made that motion, and it was seconded by Mickey Luckman. All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you. Jennifer, appreciate it.